All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. It is time for Silver and Black today. Of course, this is the BetUS post-game show. I had trouble getting it out. I know it's going to be rough for everybody out there. Raiders 32-13 losers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my good friend Murf from Raiders Fan Radio. He's going to have our Voice of the Fan segment and stick with us throughout the show. As painful as it may be for him, we might devolve and start going into the taco reviews he's talked about on his show or movie reviews. By the way, I did like the new Beetlejuice. I know it's Halloween time coming up. So if you haven't seen the new Beetlejuice, I was surprised by it. So there you go. Trying to start off with some more positivity here, but a rough one for the Raiders again. And appreciate you guys being with us again. Video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. We are an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your audio. Please rate and review as well. You can follow Murf at _MURF. That's the Murf. It's not a PH, it's an F. And you can also follow, and please do subscribe to the Raiders Fan Radio YouTube channel. Also, you can subscribe to their podcast wherever you get your audio as well. The best fan podcast, with all due respect to the other fan podcasts who I love as well. These guys just have done such a great job, and we're going to be doing a show around the Cincinnati game together here in Cincinnati, so it's going to be fun. But anyway, we're back. We want to talk to you about this Raiders game. And Murf, as always, I always get you in first because I know the fans and, of course, the chat's already electric and going crazy with all sorts of stuff, is the fact that we want to hear from you on this game. Clearly, we've had a couple 3 weeks now of all of these stuff happening, the Devontae Adams stuff, which now seems to be going the other direction, and all the other just off the field stuff. And then, of course, on the field, the quarterback change. We see Aiden O'Connell come out, do okay at times, struggle at other times. But give us your sense and talk to us and be that voice of the Raiders fan after this game against the Steelers at home.
Scott, thank you for having me as always. And thank you to everybody that's in the chat room and joining us live. And, as you can see here, for those of you that are on the video version of the podcast, I'm literally sitting on the floor of what used to be the fan cave here in my studio. And I feel like this is kind of symbiotic to what the Raiders are, like the bottom, I can't sit any lower on the floor than what I am right now. We're at the absolute bottom of this thing. And I thought it was going to be different this time, and shame on me. I thought that this was finally the time for the culture that has reemerged, and this whole idea of getting back to the Raider way and all this talk. And now all that talk, Scott, it starts to ring hollow after a while. And this was finally the week that I think it lost me. I mean, this is now, we are the Raiders of old. We are the Raiders of always, aside from a couple of blips on the radar. It's been absolute a sad sack of bad news, Scott, for 20 plus years. And listen, and not for nothing, but this franchise has gone downhill ever since they failed to sign Will Compton in the playoff Willie run, going back a couple of years ago. So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges around this organization, Scott, and I'm sure we'll get into many of them, but at the end of the day, it's like, this is the thought I had here about the third quarter of this football game today. It was like, we have a rich history as the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders. We have a wonderful history of our legends and our legacy and Al Davis and all the amazing things that happened back in the 60s and the 70s and in the 80s. We have amazing uniforms. They're gorgeous. We have the absolute best fans, hands down, in all of sports. We have an amazing facility in the coolest kick-ass party city in the entire world. And all that equates to what? A dog shit performance on a Sunday. And that is rough, especially when you see all that goddamn yellow. Scott, all that was in the stands today, that's embarrassing. It's like, at what point will the organization get tired of being embarrassed? And I don't know what it is, and you've heard me say it on this show numerous times. It doesn't matter what city they play in, who the coach is, who the quarterback is, who owns it. It doesn't matter. It's all a shit show every goddamn Sunday, Scott. And it's like, it's exhausting to be a Raider fan. I will always love this football team, and I will always love Raider Nation. But damn it, you look at what that product was on the field today. They come off with a hot start, got some momentum, and then every freaking week it's the same shit. And it's been going on forever. Why am I surprised by it? Next week when I come on this show, I'm going to be putting clown makeup on, and because I've been buying into it's going to be different this time. Yeah, is it really though?
Well, and see, that's where I was going back and forth with some folks during the game, all respectfully, of course, because most people who are level-headed are that way. And some people were saying, well, if the defense is doing great, it's just the offense stinks so bad. And I don't agree with the assessment of the offense, by the way, but the defense isn't great either. And I think that you have to look at it from this perspective. What concerns me about this Raider team, because remember, for most of you out there who are fans, Mo and I were much more conservative with how we thought they would do, 7-8 wins or so. Okay. And that's fine. A lot of fans thought 10 wins, 11 wins, and that's great. You should, as a fan, like, you should be excited. That's the way it is. But I looked at that and I said, okay, if this team's going to win 7 games, then I almost expected them to go right at 3-3 or 2-4. I wasn't surprised by that. What I am surprised by, and I want to get your reaction to this, Murph, is because of all of the love and the work that was done to ensure Antonio Pierce got the job from the players' perspective. They really liked him. The fans liked him, obviously, because of his persona and his attitude and his ability to kind of, I think, articulate the Raider way and what it is as far as verbally goes, is that this team is not just losing games. If they lost games where they play tough, they play disciplined, and, a play goes this way, a play goes that way, a call goes this way, a call goes that way, and you lose, okay. You say, okay, you know what? He's building something here, and it's going to take time. We don't have all the players we need. Totally fine. But they're getting boat run in these games, right? You're talking about an average now of 16, 17 points per game on the loss side. And in their 2 wins, they've won 1 by 4, 1 by 3. So, and at home, they're averaging about 4 points per quarter of offense. Now, that talks about how bad the offense is. But the concern here is the longer we go with losses like this, Murph, then, I look, I'm not sitting here saying Antonio Pierce should be fired like so many people are, because they're obviously upset with how things have gone. But I can see it being a one and done. If this is how they lose games the rest of the year, what that shows is what we talked about last week, my friend, which is you just want to see progress, not necessarily always wins as much as you want to win every game. You want to see progress. But what we're not seeing is progress. Beginning of the game, they come out again and they fool you, just like they did in 3 other games, right? Where they come out and it looks good and you're like, wow, okay, maybe they're all together. They're focused. And then they lose focus. There's missed tackles. There's all sorts of things going on. That's what concerns me, Murph, is that as much as fans can love the coach, and he's not in a perfect situation, okay? I don't make excuses, but I'm also saying he's not in a perfect situation. He knew that. But the way in which they are losing is the biggest concern.
Regression is the ultimate indictment of bad coaching. There's no other way around it. And so as much as I love Antonio Pierce and we love the persona and we love the Air Force Ones and this yelling Raiders and you smoke our shit, talk our shit, all that, driving an Impala, that stuff is awesome. It's badass. I still don't, not love those things, but you got to equate that, or at least you got to follow that up with some success on the field, Scott. And what you're saying there is incredibly true. It's they've gone backwards. This team has gone backwards from where they were last year with an entire offseason to build up. We had an entire offseason to do something about quarterback, didn't. We had an entire offseason to do a lot of things about a lot of different positions. Well, and while they did some well, when you look at offensive line or whatever, if your team is so not sensitive, what's the word I'm looking for? If it's so fragile that a handful of injuries causes the whole thing to go to shit, well, then guess what? You haven't built a very good football team. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, is that this Raider team is so fragile. It's once one thing goes wrong, then that's it. Then it's just ball game. It's over. And there were, historically with these Raider teams, there was a quit in them where it was we would just lay down, man. You roll back the clock to some of those Dennis Allen football teams and some of the others that you could see it just erode during the course of a game. I don't sense that as much, Scott, but I do sense a weakness of play, a lack of depth and talent. And you're right too. And to touch on your point, these guys were banging the table for this coach. And, a lot of us fans, including myself, were banging the table for this coach. A lot of media was banging the table for this coach. And now we got the gig and then they lay down.
It's weird.
Where it's weird, and that's something too we've never seen. And you know what? Because players were banging the table for Rich Bisaccia, and Mark Davis didn't hire him. But how many instances in the history of the Raiders, and I've turned the calendar a few times, just like you have, in the entire history of this team, have we seen the entire team themselves, the players themselves, bang the table and like literally threaten to like want to move on and risk their legacy and all this shit for this one guy. And then this is how it turns out. This is what's so puzzling to us as Raider fans, Scott. It doesn't make any damn sense, but it should make sense because, hey, look, this is what we've always got. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't surprise us, but for whatever reason, we got such a love for this team and a love for everything that it has to do with Raider Nation. I saw a video today, and I'm going to look it up here in a second so I can shout them out, but there was an amazing new music video that came out featuring Marshawn Lynch. They did it in the parking lot of Allegiant Stadium. It was absolutely incredible. And it's like, I see stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, right. Like, it fires me up. That stuff fires me up more than the damn team does nowadays.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think when you look at that situation, you talked about how these guys went to the mat for Antonio Pierce. And listen, Antonio Pierce isn't the only issue here. So I'm not just focusing on that. We'll get through the rest of it as well. But it is, I also want to thank Anthony for his $10 super chat. And he says, I'm just deflated. At this point, I have only witnessed one season, 2016, in my lifetime as a fan. Why can't this organization get back on track? Hey, I understand, man. Hang in there. I get it. It's tough, especially for the younger fans. But I want to get to this too, because I have Mike here who says, stop trying to crap on AP. We have players that are not true Raiders. It will take some time to get real. Wait a minute. It will get real players who believe in the Raider way. AP is the guy to get this done. Now, Mike, and I know you got something to say here too, Murph. Mike, here's my thing. The Raider way is winning. The Raider way is not a 64 Impala. It's not Air Force Ones. It's not a cool jacket walking in the stadium. Yeah, that's part of the culture and it's cool and it makes Raider Nation very unique. But it's winning and discipline. Remember, again, Antonio Pierce talked about discipline, physicality, pain, all that stuff in the offseason. And that defense doesn't do that. It just doesn't do it. Now, Max Crosby, again, there's examples of guys. Don't get me wrong. There's guys who would, as Max Crosby said last week, he'd die for his teammates. I believe that 100%. Never going to call that into question. But not everybody. And you might say, well, there's players that aren't true Raiders. They put the jersey on, man. They get paid to put the jersey on, and they're out there playing for this coach that they all went to bat for, at least most of them that are there now. And so you can't say that. You can't say, stop. The coach is responsible. The coach is responsible. The coach is responsible for challenging a play that looked like a touchdown, but instead rushed to the line to run a play from the 1 yard line in the shotgun. Like that happens. And then challenge the play late in the game where it had no impact on the game whatsoever, except for Pittsburgh scoring more. So these are issues, and you can find it, Mike. Listen, it's not crapping on him. He's in a business where he gets evaluated by what he said. Resume on the grass. He's 2-4. His resume says 2-4. If he's 4-2, we're talking about a different thing here. So don't crap on AP. He deserves it. Now, does Tom Telesco? A little bit. Absolutely. First year in, have they got the talent? No, they don't have all the talent, but we knew they weren't going to do that in the first year. Do the players have responsibility? Absolutely. Murph, we saw guys again today. I don't call into question effort. I didn't see a lack of effort, but what I did see, I thought, and I was texting Mo during this, that I see sometimes guys just, even players I really like and I think are very good, like Nate Hobbs, sometimes on plays look like they're kind of 70, 80%. And I don't think that's an effort thing. I think it's like an intensity and a focus thing. Do you see some of that too?
Absolutely. And that's part of the thing that I was talking about that rings hollow is that whole ill intent, violence, pain, all that kind of stuff. Like, where is all that stuff? Like, where is all that scrappiness of this Raider team that we saw last year when AP was coaching for his job? And I would push back on that comment too that that person made there in the chat. And in much respect, and thank you for watching the show. Thank you for the show. He's a good dude. And thank you for the show support. But like, listen, man, Antonio Pierce deserves criticism. Just like Derek Carr deserved criticism, just like anybody else that like doesn't ultimately lead to victories for this football team. I'm sorry, you get criticism, and I'm the ultimate Raider cheerleader. Shit, we get accused of that nonstop of being like, oh, you guys are just cheerleaders for the Raiders on your show. All you do is just, you know what I mean? You what's the word I'm looking for? Where you're like, pander, yeah, just like all you guys are like, all you do is just like, you're all in for the Raiders. The Raiders, they must pay these guys for their opinions or whatever. Stop, man. Listen, that's the kind of stuff we get accused about. So for us and for me to take the opinion, they're like, no, this guy has to be culpable for the results that are on the field. And it ain't about being a true Raider or a real Raider. Those two terms, and again, no offense, man, I appreciate your comment, but those things always rub me the wrong way. Well, true Raider fans think this. Real Raider fans think that. Real Raiders do this. True Raiders do
There's
that.
some litmus test. Apparently.
It's all bullshit, man. It doesn't matter how long you've been a fan, how many jerseys you have, how many games you've been to. What's the emotion and the passion that you bring to this football team as a fan? That's what determines whether you're a Raider or not. And as a player, guess what? It's their job. Yeah. That's their job. Their job isn't to be a real Raider or a true Raider. Their job is to execute and on defense cover your 11th of the field. That's what they're getting paid to do. It has nothing to do with their emotion around the football team. That's our job as fans. The players are there. They get paid. They are there to do a job. And when they fail to do their job at the highest level, it falls on the coaching. That's it. Bottom line. If you have this ability and this status that you've established in this league, and then all of a sudden that thing starts to get worse and your team starts to fall down the hill, that's an indictment of coaching. When you want to blame it on AP, Luke Getsy, Patrick Graham, some people want to fire Mark Davis, like what? Sure, blame them all. Blame them all, and maybe Tom Brady will come to save us. But as of right now, like Thursday. You can't. I'm telling you, Scott.
Murph, no, you bring up some good points there too. And Mike did respond to us. I just want to give him continue the conversation a little bit. And that was, he says he's a rookie coach, give him time. Now, he had 9 games last year, right? Am I wrong there? Okay. And then he was supposedly bringing in Marvin Lewis, all these guys to help him this year. And it's not that I didn't like the hire, Mike. I think you got that wrong. It's that on this show, at least, I don't know how you guys talked about it, Murph, on your show, but on our show, we talked about it just as we felt the hiring process wasn't exhaustive. If AP would have gone up against a couple real candidates and won out, then you say, okay, fine, it's all good. But every coach has positives and negatives. Even Jim Harbaugh, who I had advocated for at the very beginning of that process, he had downsides too. Not everybody's perfect. So I get that. Antonio Pierce had a different downside, which was the experience issue. So that's where it's at. But again, Mike, we appreciate the conversation as always. By the way, our buddy Pat McKemie says it's about commitment to excellence. That's what made us. Pat McKemie, good friend of mine in San Diego, who's also going to be involved. We can't talk about it yet, but a project we're doing with Murph and the One Nation Foundation, a big one that we'll talk about later. So thanks to Pat for all the work he's doing there, which you guys will find out about soon. But anyway, yeah, so that's the thing is like there are, and I said this I think last week too, multiple areas of failure. That's what happens when you're 2-4. It's not one thing. You can't blame one person. Ultimately, you can go up to the owner and say, okay, it's been 25 years. This is what we've been dealing with. That's fine. But Matthew, by the way, thanks for the $10 chat. Getsy's a clown. Our offense is so vanilla. We have a tomato can for an OC, 20 plus years of mediocrity. AP, I love him, but I'm worried it won't work out. Is Lloyd Christmas going back to bring Chucky back? Well, we're not going to talk about that stuff today, about the Gruden stuff. We talked a little bit about last time. But anyway, I want to talk about what's at hand here. But the multiple levels of failure, look, this team doesn't have the talent it needs. It has injuries. Those aren't excuses. Every team has injuries. I can give you examples of starting quarterbacks in the NFL whose receivers were out and they were down to their 3rd, 4th, and 5th receivers and still went out and won games. So if you want to give Aiden O'Connell a pass just because he didn't have Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, not an excuse. You got to look at the throws he missed and all this kind of stuff. Now, that change we saw, I think people were genuinely happy up until towards the end of the game when Aiden O'Connell did turn the ball over once because he didn't turn the ball over. So Aiden O'Connell, I said it in the first half, Murph, he was efficient, but he wasn't electric. He didn't come in and give them some kind of big spark that maybe we hoped he could in some way. Just didn't see that piece of it. Still having trouble running the ball as far as the Raiders offense is concerned. When you look at Aiden O'Connell's performance, you know, his quarterback rating about 87, 27 of 40. So percentage wise, not great. 227 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 79.9 passer rating. Justin Fields didn't have a good day either. 14 to 24, 145. No touchdowns, no turnovers. There was one, but the Raiders had a penalty and a 75.9 quarterback rating. So the Raiders did do a good job defensively of containing Justin Fields, at least from a passing perspective. But you look at Aiden O'Connell, I still think that you stick with Aiden O'Connell. And I think that Raider fans, I know it's still early. We're only 6 games in, okay? And I say that because I think 6 games is the turning point. I think once you get past 6, you're no longer it's early, because you kind of see what this team's going to be. So if I'm the Raiders, we saw Dylan Lobby come in. I know a lot of people wanted him to play. He fumbled, unfortunately, a great play. Ball was punched out. I don't know if he should be playing or not. I'm not a coach. I'm not at practice every day. But I do know with where this team is and where we know they are at with the injuries and the quarterback situation, I think they need to just play the young talent they have, let them get seasoned, let them play. If you want to call that tanking, call it tanking, whatever you want to call it. I don't call it that. I just call it, hey, you are who you are. Let's find out what we have. Don't take Jackson Powers-Johnson out because of his penalties, and they won't. But nonetheless, let these younger guys play, see what you have, and go from there.
Yeah, because it feels like it's ball game at this point, Scott. I mean, because I'm with you, and it felt like this could have been a turning point. You know, we're headed into Kansas City now, coming off a couple of skids. And like, what has been the highlight of this year was beating Baltimore, right? But then what did we do after that win in Baltimore was we followed it up with a turd sandwich against the Carolina Panthers. So it's like, you know, there's not really like, what is it that we have to be excited about? I'm not even joking. Like, I thought going into this season, this could have been a 10-plus win team. Like, when you looked at the way that the schedule stacked up and we looked at you know, the things that the Raiders had going for them, I thought for sure we were going to win a bunch of games. At this point now, Scott, I'm thinking we might only win 2 more.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like, and I mean that, I mean that genuinely, and that sucks. And so it's like now here the Raiders are going to be in a position to where they're going to have to draft a quarterback. Because I'm with you on the Aiden O'Connell thing. That, like, you know, Aiden O'Connell, he was fine. But what else did we expect as Raider fans? Like you said, did he provide a spark? No, but did it? And I ask you this: did you think he was going to provide a spark? I didn't. I mean, I thought he was fine last year, and I thought he would be fine now. It's like we kind of know what we're going to get, despite a full offseason. And you know his you know attempt to become a little bit more mobile, and we saw some of that today. Unfortunately, some things got called back because of stupid, untimely penalties. Go figure, a Raider game broke out. But but aside from those things, it's like I didn't expect Aiden O'Connell to do much more than what he did today. Just like we wouldn't expect any more from Gardner Minshew. And there lies the ultimate crux of this football team, is that we've got to get a quarterback. And so now here, and this is some, you want to talk, I can curse on this one, right?
Yeah, of course.
The most Raidery shit that happens is that finally in a year where whether you want to call it tanking, resting your starters, whatever you want to call it, but that scenario where the Raiders are playing younger players, don't achieve a level of success throughout the course of a season, have a top 10 or even a top 5 draft pick the way that it's looking, the way it's going to go, in a year where the quarterbacks maybe aren't that great. And so, and I had a lot of people on Twitter and stuff be like, oh, Murf, what are you talking about? What are you watching? Listen, I'm paying really close attention to college football this year, and I see guys like, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, who I hope doesn't become a Raider, but Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, you know, Quinn Ewers, you know, whatever, the Cam Ward. I see some guys out there that are like struggling through games. Then they have like one big drive to win a game, and the announcers go, "Oh my gosh, they're going to be a Heisman candidate." Like, this is not last year. Our time to get a quarterback was last year. So it's like, here you go. Here's some Raider shit. We're in this quarterback like purgatory. And then now here we're going to finally have an opportunity to maybe draft somebody in the top rounds. And none of them are all that great. I'm sorry. Like, they're not that great. They're fine. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm not a film guy. And I hope that you all out there are right about Raider Nation. But ultimately, that's what it comes down to, Scott, full circle with the conversation. When it comes down to Aiden and it comes down to the quarterback play, this team has just been suffering since we moved on from Derek Carr and hasn't done a thing about it. I think it was the correct move to move on from Derek, but what they did in follow-up was awful, just like it was with Khalil Mack. It was the right time to move on, but what they did as a result was awful. And how many times are we going to see the Raiders make a significant decision amongst the football team and then completely fail in every decision that's made after that? It's nonstop.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Mike Lowry, who we were talking with about AP, just did a $20 super chat for the the One Nation Foundation. Appreciate your show and interaction. Please get Murf a gummy, he says. I love that. And by the way, our good friend and my former co-host, Kelly Greiner, says Murf asking if he can curse after cursing 20 times previously. I love it. That's good.
Sorry, Kelly. I get all emotional and fired up, and I don't even realize. I don't even know the words that are coming out of my mouth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but your point about the quarterback situation, I agree with you too. As far as this class, and you just never know. I mean, the class that just came out, everybody thought all these guys are going to be great, and you just don't know what's going to happen. We've seen Caleb Williams come along. We've seen Jaden Daniels do pretty well, though today against the Ravens. Obviously, he still had a pretty good game, but not great. So young quarterbacks are going to grow. So what the Raiders do, they got to do something. And we talked about this during the summer, Murph, and that is, and Mo brought it up. He's like, look, you got to you draft one, and guess what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We've seen that happen. We saw it happen. We saw it happen in lots of areas where guys give up. We saw it happen in New York, and yeah, it sucks, but you got to take the big swing. You have, at this point, you can't do the Band-Aid quarterback thing. You got to figure it out. They have Gardner Minshew for 2 years. That's why they signed him, I think. He's going to be the backup. I think you leave him as a backup. He's an expensive backup, not relatively speaking, actually, but he is. So you have him there, whatever. You know what you got there, fine. So let Aiden O'Connell go and just go with the course of the way things happen this year. And to me, that's all. The issue, though, is, and a lot of you have been talking about, this team and Antonio Pierce, the coaching staff, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? It's a little different, too. I'm telling you, your sphincter gets a little tighter when you become the head guy. And I said this back in the offseason, Murph. When you go from interim to the head guy and now it's your responsibility, because a lot of people are criticizing AP and surprised by the fact that there's conservatism here with the defense, with the offense at times and play calls. Man, when your job's on the line, you're not fighting for a job. You're not being bold, showing you belong. Instead, you're trying to keep your job. It's a different scenario. It's different management. And I think that the Luke Getsy conversation, of course, has to be front and center because whatever's going on there is just not working. Now, don't have the quarterback. Offensive line at times can be very terrible. Of course, they had Dylan Parham going down with a foot injury today. So they're, again, injured up there as well. But obviously, Luke Getsy is not changing week to week. So I would anticipate, if I don't see something from them saying, hey, we're going to look at it differently now, we're going to go back to the drawing board and figure out what we're going to do with this offense, that would be disappointing to me because it's not working. You can't just say we got to continue just to work harder to do the same things. The same things don't work. And I know everybody would like the guy fired yesterday, but firing somebody means you got to replace him with somebody. I don't see anybody on the roster from a coaching perspective that's going to replace him. So I think you're stuck with him, maybe unless it gets really bad the next several weeks at the very least. And so you got to see them. I just want to see Pierce, the coaching staff, Getsy, when he does his weekly availability, come out and say, okay, you know what? It's not working. Here's why we think it's not working. So we're going to have to adjust. And we're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to do some things differently to utilize the talent we have and figure it out.
Yeah, and there again, too, I think that, successful coaching is when you can adjust based on the talent that's around you, not insert talent into your plan. Like I'm a full believer of that. And I've always have been. And when it comes to AP and his tightening of the sphincter, as you said so eloquently there, I remember back to my own career when I started off early on in my corporate gig. I had a presentation, Scott, and I'm going somewhere with this, Raider Nation.
Yes.
So follow me. And so I had a presentation, and I was really tight. I was really nervous, and I was fumbling everything. I was blowing it, and the guy that was leading us came over to me, and he put his hand on my arm, and he said, "Hey man, relax. You got the job." AP, guess what? Listen, this is me putting my virtual hand on you, AP, and telling you, brother, you've got the job. Like, don't coach like you coach. Bring that reckless abandon. Bring that aggression. Bring that energy. Bring all that stuff. Don't worry about it. You're not going to get fired over a mistake during the course of a game. If your team is behind you, if you're playing aggressive, if you're in games, it's this tentative approach is what ultimately is going to cost you your job. That will cost you your job. That's what's going to cost Luke Getsy his job. And to go more into Luke Getsy conversation as you brought up, Scott, how many times are we going to bang our head against the wall? How many times are we going to run on second and third and long? How many times are we going to throw bubble screens, that develop behind the line of scrimmage? All these things that happen, like everything happens back here. It's like, bro, the line of scrimmage is up there. Let's do things that way. Like all this stuff that goes side to side, like we want to stretch them out. We want to exploit that wide nine. Man, F that. Screw the wide nine. Go downfield. Like where was Trey Tucker today? Where was those things today?
Yeah.
Where was Brock? I know Brock Bowers had a few catches and one big one got called back, but like that idea that like I don't understand when you have a quarterback. Look, he's not Jaden Daniels, right? He can't extend out. That's not Aiden O'Connell's game. So drive the ball downfield. I don't understand it, Scott. And that's ultimately, again, that tentativeness and that like stick-to-itiveness that like, we're going to do my thing. Well, Luke, your thing sucks, bro. So like, when are we going to do something different? Like, when are you going to adjust with the players that you have? Like, even if you are going to hand off the ball behind the line of scrimmage, where's the jet sweeps? You got all these little fast guys. You got a bunch of 5'9" fast guys. Like, let's utilize them. What a concept. And shout out DJ Turner, who went up and that big catch that he got in coverage. That was a great catch. But like, point being though, like, Scott, like, what are we doing, man? Like, where's no innovation? And again, that's an indictment of coaching. Where is the damn innovation around this football team? And I'll say this, I'm gonna shut up.
Get it out, baby.
I'll do the mo. This defense is pretty damn good. And you could see early on in games, the defense plays pretty damn well. But you can't leave them out there on the field forever. And this goes back, and people give me shit on this show all the time about me bringing up Derek Carr, but I'm going to bring it up again. The indictment of Derek Carr and the criticisms that were fair on Derek Carr was that he couldn't extend drives not they couldn't, but a lot of times didn't extend drives, and it left the defense out there to hang, and then you get tired, and even with an elite defense, ultimately over time they wear down, because playing defense is harder than playing offense, and you're gonna get beat down. It's just the freaking fact of the game, and it's always been that way. Well, here we are again, and we've got an offense that can't stay on the field. We don't convert on third downs. We're not extending drives. We're not getting into the red zone. And then, we're scoring touchdowns in the red zone. What a concept. All those things that I was ever critical of Derek for all those years, I'm going to be equally as critical of Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Luke Getsy, Antonio Pierce, all those guys. That's like some simple things around the NFL. Convert on third down, score in the red zone, don't turn the ball over, and play sound defense. The end. Like, absolutely. That's all you got to do. And this team doesn't do any of that.
No. And if they just did, and if they still lost because the talent level's not equal, fine. Now, Pittsburgh is not that talent level. They're that better team than the Raiders, obviously, as it showed tonight, but that's just the way it goes. All right, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to tell you about our good friends at BetUS who brings you this video. We come back, Murph and I will address some more of the comments, and also we will talk more about the game. This is Silver and Black Today, Odyssey Sports original podcast. Video brought to you by BetUS. Scott and Murph coming right back. All right, everybody, I'm going to tell you, because tomorrow, of course, we got Monday Night Football tomorrow, right? And I'm going to go in and show you and talk to you about my good friends from BetUS. As you can see on the screen now, I'm showing you some live betting as I do it. By the way, if you check out BetUS, if you haven't already decided where you're going to bet your football, which I know we're into the season now, we're going to go into week 7. But if you haven't already done that, check out our friends from BetUS. And not only that, but if you check out them with us, using this code YouTube150, you get 150% sign-up bonus. Yes, put in $100, you get $150. Put in $20, you get it. You can do the math. Using the promo code YouTube150, you can start playing today. BetUS fast payouts. You can deposit instantly. You can withdraw instantly. They have great odds. And I know Mo and I have been telling you about this all season long. And tonight I'm going in. I want to bet with you guys. And I want you to tell me in the chat, because I'm going in for the Monday night game. And we're going to check out like the Bengals tonight against the Giants. I'm not touching that one. I don't know what to do. But the Bills and the Jets, the Bills are only a 1-point favorite because the Jets defense is pretty good, right? But I actually like the Bills. The Bills have had a couple rough weeks, and I'm just a Josh Allen fan. I think he's great. I like this one. And I also think the Jets might actually, even though the Bills defense is pretty solid, I think the Jets might break out of their offensive slump a little bit. But I'm just not comfortable going over and under on this. So I'm just betting the line on this one. And tell me what you guys think. I think the Bills are going to win this game. I think it will be probably a 1 or 2 score game. So I'm thinking a one minus 1 is nothing. Giving a point is nothing on this one. So I'm going to show you right here let me switch this out so you can see the screen a little bit bigger for those of you in the video. But so you can see here, I got -1, the Bills, which is basically an even with the Jets. The Jets are a mess. They just fired their head coach. Aaron Rodgers can catch fire. I think he could, but who knows? But dude, I'm going in all in on this. I'm going $150 on this bet right now on the Bills. So 150 to win one because it's -120 on that money line. So here I go. I'm going to bet $150. You can see there to win to 125. So if I lose tomorrow, you guys can all make fun of me up on X.com. But there you go. There's my confirmation. But there you go. See, you can go into BetUS anytime. As I said, really great site. The app for the phone. You can bet in almost every single state, including Nevada, if you're watching us in Nevada. But check that out. And don't forget, because it's important, I want to give you free money. Free money. I'm giving you free money. 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 using the code YouTube150. That's YouTube150 from your friends at BetUS. Thanks, guys. Have fun and happy winnings. All right. It is Scott Gulbransen. It is Murf. It is the post-game show. Raiders 32-13 losers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their record drops to 2-4. We are talking about it from the high level, and we're talking about it right at the guttural level, of course, which is the fan level. That's why we have Murf on the show. By the way, if you don't subscribe to Raiders Fan Radio, please do so here on YouTube or wherever you get your video. They're on Facebook. They're everywhere as well. And their podcast, which you can find wherever you get your audio. Just look for Raiders Fan Radio. You can also do the same thing for Silver and Black today. We're an Odyssey Sports original podcast. You can also hear us on Sundays on KDON 101.5 FM in Las Vegas, as well as The Bet in Las Vegas, 2 radio stations owned by Odyssey there. So we appreciate our radio audience out there. Scott Gulbransen, you can follow me on X.com at LVGully. And Murf is at _Murf, MURF. So there you go. All right, buddy, we're back, and the chat is still pretty lively. People are upset, as you can imagine, and having fun with it. But we were talking before we left, and I highlighted a comment, and I wanted to go back to it because it caught me. This is one thing too. We talk about the offense. We know what's wrong with the offense. There's so much wrong. They can't run the ball. Quarterback issues, offensive line issues, lack of talent because of the injuries, all that stuff we know. But I'm starting to push back against people on the defense, Murf. Somebody in the comments said this defense is great. It's not great. It's good at times. Coming into the game, they were ranked 16th. That's great compared to where it's been in previous years. That's progress. It's not as good as we thought it could be. Now, Christian Wilkins is out injured. We know that. Malcolm Kuntz came back. What a game he had, especially early on when things were flying around. He was doing great. Divine Diablo. Thank you. Not Malcolm Kuntz. So we love that piece of it, but there's still things wrong with this defense. This defense is not as good as we thought it would be. Mo and I said in the preseason it had the potential, I believed, to be a top 10 offensive team. It has not reached that potential. Some of that injury-based, other bit goes back to what you were saying earlier, Murf, and that is coaching. I don't know what's going on with the defense and why, especially defensive backfield, which really plays, Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones. These guys are playing really well, and we're seeing Nate Hobbs, We're seeing Moore come along. We're seeing these guys play better. Palomao playing good at times. Yeah. But it just seems like there's just a little bit of inconsistency there that I didn't expect. I thought they'd be a little more consistent. And we haven't seen that. So there's room, again, in all 3 phases here. We saw special teams miscue tonight. I think there's room here for all 3 areas of this team to get better. That's not putting down the defense because the offense doesn't score. So I get it. That's tough on them. Yeah. And sometimes they're on the field too much. Sometimes they're not. When Pittsburgh went up late in the game, the time of possession is equal. You were talking about the offense and having the ball, but just not being able to get in the red zone. And not being able to capitalize, right? So I think, and turnovers clearly kill you on the 1 yard line, especially. But I think that's what you got to look at with this team is always look at the critical eye. Give credit where credit is due, like we were talking about tonight with Divine Diablo, but also realize that there's a lot that needs to be shored up to.
Yeah, and so Scott, earlier you mentioned that we have the guttural opinion of the fan, which is what I represent here, sitting on the floor of my fan cave. I wish I would have finished up that 4th year of college, and I'd know if guttural isn't a compliment or a slant. But anyways,
emotional. It's following your instinct.
That's all I got, Scott. I'm nothing but a bundle of emotion in a glass case over here.
Hey, I went to UNLV and I love my alma mater, but it wasn't Harvard, so don't worry about it, buddy.
Okay, all right, there we go. Well, shout out all you English majors out there. But so in terms of the defense, though, I don't put it squarely on them. Yes, they are inconsistent. I agree with you that there are inconsistencies, but I think that is a result of situation. And and again, go back to people are so sick of me bringing up Derek, but he was our history for 9 years. So don't yell at me, yell at the sky. It's what we had. So I got to compare it to when Derek was part of this football team. It was the context of which mistakes were made and the unfortunate positions that the defense got put in. Well, guess what? Derek ain't around anymore, but we're still seeing those things. And it's the unfortunate context that when you look at the position that the defense gets put in because of 3 and outs, because of turnovers, because of those things, it puts them in a very, very challenging position. When you have to defend a short field or you have to defend in a long drive, ultimately your defense is going to wear down. That's one of the things I was talking about earlier, is that you can't expect that defense to be like that all game long. At some point, the offense has to help them out. Just like at some point, your defense needs to get that 3 and out and help out your offense. It's ultimately complementary, and that's what makes this thing the ultimate and the best team game on the planet. And so without those two things, without that symbiotic relationship between the freaking offense and the defense, then one of them is going to falter. And so that's where I look at the defense, and like you said, they're ranked 16th. How many years do we look at our Raiders and go, man, if we had a top 20 defense, then we'd be a freaking awesome football team. And now here we are with the top 16, and we're going, maybe they're inconsistent. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Sure. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, where's the offense? Where's the running game? Where's the, and Alexander Madison had a little bit, going on today. Dylan Laube, man, bro, you're not playing Monmouth anymore, apparently. You know what I mean? Like, and I hate that for that young man. Hopefully he can snap back. But there again goes, that's a lack of depth on this football team and a ton of lack of depth really all over the place, but especially offensively. So while I can appreciate your comments and I understand that inconsistency on the defensive side of the football, I also got to look at the other side too and look at at this point, the way that this thing has gone downhill, it's everyone. Like like you said, we even had a special teams gaffe today, which is not on AJ. It's on the blocking, and I don't know who missed the block. But anyway, the point being though is that like when you're coming up short in all 3 phases, well then it's like we just throw darts and find somebody to pick on. You know what I mean? Who can we look at today other than Bob Spillane, Divine Diablo that you mentioned? Of course, Max is a freaking, is a warrior. JPJ did great. I don't know that stupid ass call with the downfield. If it was him or Andre James, I don't know what was going on there. But there are a handful of players that we can point at and say, okay, those guys were very good today.
Sure.
Outside of that, it's pretty slim picking, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And by the way, our good friend Consigliere Salt, super chat, $10. Appreciate it for your One Nation Foundation donation. He says it's one thing to lose on the field, but we can't lose the crowd. You can't hide the opposing fan crowd noise any longer. It's such a glaring problem. Vegas, no soul. Raiders, no soul. So again, I used to live in Vegas. I don't live there anymore, but it's not that Vegas doesn't have soul. It's the Vegas Raiders, since they've been there. You have to, fans, even in Oakland, I think people forget. I mean, and again, I'm not in any way criticizing the environment in Oakland because I know it was very special to a lot of people. But people forget that it wasn't always sold out either, and that opposing fans came in there. It wasn't Vegas, though. People they don't want to go from Cleveland to Oakland. They go from Cleveland to Las Vegas because it's Las Vegas, okay? So you're going to have a higher percentage no matter what. But if the Raiders were a playoff perennial team, people aren't going to give up their tickets, Murph. They're just not going to do it. I know that because I know Raider Nation. They're not going to give up their tickets. Now, somewhat I get it. It's a different world today, but I just don't see that happening. So I think the whole idea, that's why I pointed out today, look, the Raiders, imagine you're a fan and you spend $1,200 to take just on tickets to take your family to a game in Las Vegas, and they score on average 4 points a quarter. Like, what are you going to see? Right? You're a Raider fan. You'll be there till you die, but it's not exciting. And I think that excitement that builds up in the city, we saw it with the hockey team, with the Golden Knights eventually winning the Stanley Cup. People will come and they will do that. You can say, oh, you should come anyway. But I see a lot of you people telling me you're done in there, but you're telling people they should still go spend $3,000 on a Raider game. So I agree. It's not good. It won't change though until they change the culture, and I mean that with winning culture, and that people can get excited about where this team is at, where it's going. I think if you get a quarterback like you, I'm not a massive Shedeur Sanders fan, but if you got a guy like that or whoever, then maybe people start to come out for that. But you still got to win. It doesn't matter who the names are. You still got to win.
Yeah, and shout out Consigliere Salt. That's my cousin Sonny, and I would say this that and so Sonny and I have been to a lot of games together. We started going to games together back in Oakland with our dads, all the way up into Vegas, and been to numerous Vegas Raider games. And I agree with you, Scott. Listen, Vegas is a destination city, especially when you've got teams from cold weather cities, like whether that's Minnesota or or Minneapolis, anyways, or Indianapolis, or heck, you know what I mean. Like you're going to have people that they're going to make a vacation around their favorite football team playing in Las Vegas. So we get it. Like that's going to happen. But ultimately, the point that you're making is that with winning, it eliminates that. And I would encourage Sonny and anybody else that remembers back to that the last game against the Chargers of the 2021 season, when we took them out and made the playoffs, there was very little in terms of, like, I think all the Charger fans were there because I saw 4 jerseys. So I'm pretty sure all the Charger fans were there. And, and listen, they were honoring John Madden. It was a candlelight moment and everybody had their lights up. It was beautiful. All of Allegiant Stadium, again, for those, aside from those 4 people, it was all silver and black, and it was an incredible moment, and we took the Chargers out and we made the playoffs. That's what Allegiant Stadium can look like when there's something there, because I can't, listen, I'm a capitalist at heart, and I can't begrudge people for selling their tickets. Man, listen, if you can sell 4 of your tickets and go 4 games and you can make all your money back for your season tickets by selling those 4 games, who's to tell you no? And you're not going to police it to the level where you're going to be like, no, I'm not going to sell them to a Steeler fan that wants to pay triple the face value of the ticket. Like that's not going to happen. So I understand the capitalism and that factor, but this is ultimately, though, to his point, though, and I agree with him, it is embarrassing. And listen, there were some moments where I remember the Steeler fans just travel well. There was one game at the Oakland Coliseum where there was an entire section behind the visitors' bench that was all terrible towels, and there was plenty of Steeler fans there. And and I've been to plenty of games in Oakland where there was the other opposing teams' fans, but it wasn't a welcome reception. And I'm not an advocate for violence, and I would never encourage anybody to do so. But I will say that I've seen more than one person get a beer thrown at them, or some peanuts, or what I mean, or insults, and you know what I mean? Like it was hostile for you to show up at a Raider game wearing another team's gear. So that doesn't exist in Vegas. And I'm not saying that it should, but what I'm saying is that because it doesn't, and because it's a friendly city to opposing fans, heck, you have companies that are literally flying in fans from opposing cities and putting them up at hotels and providing them all these like game day festivities and all this stuff. There's an entire business built around visiting teams' fans in Las Vegas. There's only one way that we can get rid of that. Only one way, and that's to win a bunch of damn football games. Yes. And until the Raiders do that, we're going to keep getting this, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse, Scott, and that sucks.
Yeah, it's going to get worse if the team gets worse. Like I said, if the team can get better, and I see a lot of people talking about this, and you want to build a home field environment. And I just know that when a team is winning, and I saw this because when I was living in Las Vegas, they built the T-Mobile Arena, and the hockey team was coming. Now, the hockey team was homegrown, so it wasn't a team that moved there like the Raiders, which is different. But the team came in, and everybody's like, oh, it's going to be a tough first year, but everybody's excited for the first year. So they didn't worry about selling tickets the first year. So they come in, and they had to win, and they did. And they won, and people got crazy. And at the beginning of the season, a Wednesday game against Chicago, there was a lot of Chicago fans. 30% of the arena would be Chicago fans. But as they got closer and closer to winning a Pacific Division title, for example, there weren't 30%. There were still opposing fans, of course, like you said, because they'll get tickets, they'll buy them on the secondary market. But it was not as big because fans of the team wanted to be there because it was so exciting and they were doing well. So I think you'll see that. Now, again, I think people wouldn't focus so much on this. It wouldn't happen as much if they won. And if they were winning, you wouldn't focus as much on it because you'd be happier with everything else that's going on the field. But I do think that it is different. And for those of you who went to games in Oakland or Los Angeles too, it takes getting used to, and it takes years. Now, I know this is the 5th year. I don't count the first year almost. So it's really 4 because of COVID. Nobody was there. But it takes time. I mean, again, I grew up in San Diego. I'm a Padre fan. I had season tickets. So when Petco Park opened, it was very sterile. There was no atmosphere. It just was like blah. And over time, it developed. So that I think will happen. But winning, again, I know it's cliche, but winning does cure all ills. I think people will get happier with that. But you look at some of the other things that happened today, Murph, and I look at Alexander Mattison. They went to him early. And then it seemed like they went away from him. They went to Amir Abdullah. They went, and I get the switching off carries. Abdullah had just 4 carries for 24 yards. Madison had 14 for 33. So they did give him the ball a lot. And again, this offensive line, and I think this has a lot to do with the scheme, is just not able to open up that running game. And I really believe, even with the quarterback situation, Murph, if this team could run the ball better, then you're talking about Brock Bowers not having to be double teamed once he starts getting hot like he did today. And you have more at your disposal as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback, as a coach to get things going. This Raider team, if they can't run the ball, this is exactly how I think most games are going to end up because they just can't establish it.
Yeah, and I mean, Zamir White struggled at times this year, but apparently it was enough of a mix-up with that 1-2 punch of him and Madison to keep defenses, at least guessing or, on their heels a little bit, because without him being in the game, there was not as much of success in the running game. And you brought up Brock Bowers, and Scott, it's curious to me that we saw a lot of inventiveness in terms of his placement in the offense in the preseason. Where'd that go? Where'd that go? We saw him in the slot. We saw him line up wide. We saw him at halfback and fullback and basically every offensive position that wasn't left tackle. We saw frickin' Brock Bowers playing. And where is that? Where did that go? So if you have a deficiency in the running game, then again, I go back to the lack of inventiveness when it comes to Luke Getsy. Be creative with your best players. And so I think that's one of the ultimate indictments of the lack of success and the failure of this coaching staff. And when it comes down to calling the offense, when it comes down to Luke Getsy, is that where's the creativity with this offense? And someone hit me on Twitter during the game, and they were like, do you think that it's Antonio Pierce that has the ultimate say in run or pass for the different play calls? And while I don't dispute that, and I'm sure there's some truth to that, especially when it comes to third down and crucial situations, the design, that comes down to Luke Getsy. That's him and his offensive staff. That's not Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce ain't drawing up X's and O's on offense. That ain't happening. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot to be said there to put the blame on Luke Getsy. And again, when the running game is struggling, why not mix in some of your best players? We see, look at all the different players around the league, Scott, whether it's Deebo Samuel or David Montgomery and all these guys that have turned into these hybrid positions where they go back and forth between being running backs and wide receivers or tight ends even. Where is that? Why don't the Raiders, why do we never see a player do that? Why do we never take advantage of those types of things?
Yeah, it's interesting, and our good friend South Florida Raider, who calls into the show all the time. Good to see you, man, on the live here. He says, I don't think AP really thought through his decision in essence when he hired Getsy. Now, this is really interesting because earlier, South Florida Raider, you were talking about and you were defending AP, which is totally fine. But he makes the call, dude. If he didn't think it through, don't you think you should think it through? The offense is pretty important. It's a pretty important piece of your team, and you got to have one to win. So, and this is what I went back to in talking about coaches, where people say, oh, you never wanted AP. And that's not the case. I wanted them to interview other people, because what you don't get with somebody like Antonio Pierce, he's got so much that he does give, but what he doesn't have is he doesn't have a track record of being a coordinator or a coach at the NFL level in several places. People like Jim Harbaugh, or if it was Dan Quinn, who's at Washington now, those guys, you're not just hiring them. You're hiring who will come with them because of the opportunity and because of their track record. Now, that was just one of the downsides with AP. He didn't have that. So when you have a guy like Antonio Pierce, he gets Cliff Kingsbury. We don't know what happened. There's some people speculate, and some have reported that it was because he wouldn't give him a 30-year contract or whatever. But the reality is, if you're Cliff Kingsbury, you're going to go with a guy like Dan Quinn, who's done it before and has a new quarterback, a kid coming right out of college who won the Heisman Trophy, or are you going to go with Antonio Pierce, who doesn't have any experience, doesn't have a staff full of guys that are kind of looked at as up-and-coming guys, and and it makes it easier. So that's what your trade-off was. I'm not saying it won't work, period. It's not working yet, but that's what you trade off when you hire a more inexperienced coach who came really from college, started in high school, even though he's a pro player, started in high school, then went to college at Arizona State. We know what happened there. So that is sort of what you get when they're looking for offensive coordinators, Murph, because then if it's not somebody you know and already have a relationship with that you can call up and say, hey, man, I want you here. I want you to be the next head coach of another NFL team. Come here, do this for a few years, get this offense going, and you can get another job. He didn't have the ability to do that. And so he got Luke Getsy. So, but it is what it is. Like you can't go back and question what he did and how he didn't do this. Right? It's done. You now just got to deal with moving forward. And to your point, Murph, moving forward, as I said earlier, this team, to me, from an offensive standpoint, they got to figure out what they're going to do differently. If that means changing the scheme a little bit, if Getsy's able to do that, if Antonio Pierce steps in and says, hey, Luke, ain't working. What are we going to do to improve the run game? Let's go. What's the plan? And he doesn't have to share the plan with the media or any of us. He just got to tell us they're doing to do something different. Because again, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again with the same result.
Yeah, and I mean, at some point, it's got to change, right? Like you said earlier, just top of the show, 6 weeks in, like this is we know who we are now. So what are we going to do about it? Because we don't like who we are. They shouldn't like who they are. So what are the Raiders going to do about it? And I think ultimately, and not to go totally retrospect and rearview mirror, because we can't change the past. All we can do is look forward and then hopefully learn and then be better for the future. But I would have liked to have seen this Raider team when Cliff Kingsbury, when that opportunity went out the window for whatever reason, it doesn't freaking matter. But when that thing moved, when that opportunity moved on, I would have liked to have seen them invest into a young play caller. Like, let's go with somebody that's innovative. Let's not go with somebody that's got necessarily even that lengthy of a track record, but even somebody that's, maybe called some offensive plays. Maybe it's a quarterback's coach. Maybe it's like, but I feel like, and tell me what you think, Scott. I feel like at this point in the NFL, We've seen a lot of evolutions in the NFL over the years, and it continues to evolve and adapt based on rule changes and all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And free agency. I mean, you can go on and on. But I feel like the Raiders in a decision made like hiring Luke Getsy was kind of a chase. And I would like to see the Raiders be more proactive and more forward thinking in their decision making. I'm not, I know it was an isolated occurrence, but it literally changed the trajectory of this franchise. Is when Al Davis gave an opportunity to a young linebacker coach that became the head coach and the greatest coach that the Raiders have ever seen. And you could say that Mark Davis did something similar when he gave the reins to Antonio Pierce. And I still think that it has the potential to work out and to be successful, but because he's a defensive guy and because of his inexperience, you got to surround him with some really, really innovative people. And especially when it comes to offense. Defense, I think we're doing okay from the mind of Patrick Graham. But when it comes to offense, like I would love to see if the Raiders do decide to move on from Luke Getsy, let's elevate somebody that with some, you know what I mean? Like some moxie. Like give me the young gritty guy that wants to prove himself and thinks outside the box and is willing to shelve his own ego and not be married to a system and willing to be innovative and willing to look at players and say, okay, that's what this guy does well, so let me put him in this best position for him to be successful. Like that's the kind of thinking I would like to see. I'm a little bit over this whole idea of having, these offensive or defensive coaches that are married to their system. Man, take your system, turn that sumbitch sideways and shove it right up your candy ass. Like I'm over your systems. Like let's figure out a system around the people that you already have in the building, and then let's develop them as talent and put them in positions to be successful, because that's ultimately will lead to your success. You know what I mean? Like stop having a plan. Like just look at what you've got around you and then plan according to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that is when and we talked about that a lot during the run up to and after the hiring of Antonio Pierce as the permanent head coach. We said, hey, you got to surround him with somebody from an offensive who's going to bring that to them. And instead they went with a hire. I don't know why. We don't know why. They went with a guy who is in essence didn't do well in Chicago for whatever reason and seems to not be doing well here. Isn't doing well here with what they have. And so to me, that's a problem. And now it becomes a problem moving ahead as we look way down the road, Murph, for Antonio Pierce, because listen, Antonio Pierce is less likely to retain his job unless they find a good answer for offensive coordinator. Because what you're not going to do is draft a quarterback. Let's say they do make the top 5 and get a quarterback up there that they like. You're not gonna bring in a young quarterback under Luke Getsy or Antonio Pierce if they can't get somebody to come in and be exactly what you said. Because the worst thing you can do is you might get a guy who could be a franchise quarterback and you ruin them. Now, we don't know if Justin Fields is going to make it. He's had an okay start in Pittsburgh and he's 4-2, but we don't know how his long-term prognosis looks, but he didn't do well under Luke Getsy. He struggled, he fumbled, he had turnovers, he had all kinds of issues there. Yeah. Didn't work. So to me, that's what I'm looking down the line and saying, okay, well, when you look at Antonio Pierce, it's not just going to be the record on the field. It's going to be a lot of other aspects that come into play there. And then you got to start to think about Tom Telesco. Now, Tom Telesco, this first year comes in, had pretty good picks in the draft. We've seen guys do pretty well and contribute. Now he's going to go into year 2. This is the biggest thing he's going to do because he's going to have to get a quarterback. And so now the pressure starting next year will be on Tom Telesco, but the pressure on everybody right now is to figure it out and just plan a path forward where you see progress. We said it earlier in the show, my friend, and I think that's, I don't want to kick the dead horse continually here on the show, and we'll get ready to wrap it up here pretty soon and tell everybody about the One Nation Foundation. But I think that's where fans have to look at it and be realistic and say, okay, let's just see some improvement here. Let's see some changes on the offense to just utilize whatever it is that we have and move forward. And then you can feel better about your team to say, hey, at least they're doing what they can to see who they have. They can use Dylan Lobby. They can get Jackson Powers Johnson the snaps he needs to get better. We can see what Aiden O'Connell is going to be, if not more than a backup. So to me, that's what they need to do the rest of the way. And playoffs, all that stuff, I wouldn't even think about it. But just look for your team to get better week to week.
Well, that's what led us into this season having so much hope in the offseason, was that when you look at the way that the Raiders, the culture that was developed in the organization at the beginning of last year, to the firing of Josh McDaniels, and to where Antonio Pierce took this team, and the inspired play and the leadership that was demonstrated and all the wonderful things that happened with this football team. Yes, I know it was only a 5-4 record, but that 5-4 felt like 9-0. Like, that felt like a completely different football team than what we started the year with. Well, where did that go? Like, and I, again, to go back to the comments I made earlier about Antonio Pierce, you got the job. So like, where's that recklessness? And it's not sloppy. It's not a sloppy recklessness. It's not considering the potential outcome, but it's like just having the balls, like no risk it, no biscuit, man. Like, I'll save the other term I was just getting ready to say. I was gonna. Well, never mind. God, I don't want to get you canceled, Scott. But you know what I mean? But like, don't hesitate. Like, just act and go with your heart, go with your gut. I felt like that's the way Antonio Pierce coached last year, and that's where we've got to get to close this year up. Because you're right. Like, if we continue this regression, then it's just going to end up being just an endless snowball of criticism that's going to surround this football team. People are calling for Mark to sell the team, and I know we got some comments in there, and I want to address that real quick too. And I know I'm all over the place, but I'm fired up, and
that's okay.
Because we just lost a stupid game, but the idea that, and I see it on Twitter, I see it on social media, whatever, the X, whatever the kids call it nowadays. I see that stuff out there, and it's like, Mark, sell the team. Listen, Raider fan, listen, this is Murf talking to you here. Mark's not going to sell this team ever. Okay, it's not going to happen. It's mental masturbation at this point to even think about the idea that Mark Davis would sell this football team. It's not going to happen. It is his father's legacy, and it is now his legacy. So what we have to do as fans is support the man and support the organization and hope for a brighter outcome and a brighter future. And I think that with this ruling that's getting ready to come down, and I know that a lot of you are in your feelings about Tom Brady because of the Tuck rule, but get over it and let's move on. There's an idea here that there is a voice to be heard in Mark Davis's ear, and it's the all-time greatest quarterback that this league has ever seen. That's not a bad thing. So if instead of saying, hey, Mark, sell the team, instead let's redirect that energy towards, hey, Mark, let's have you be an ear to Tom Brady. And I know that's weird and that feels gross coming out of my mouth, but it's the truth of it, though. It's what we've got. Let's hope that there's some influence that gets exercised there. And if you really want to see a change in ownership, TB12 is going to be your guy. That's the way that this thing is going to go. And again, and I don't, you can't just switch ownership and all of a sudden have a great football team.
No.
But there is a Washington Commanders example that's happened so far this year, and you see the direction of this football team, since Dan Snyder sold it, and you see that there's a whole different energy around that organization.
Yeah.
So let's hope that there's a little bit of influence that can be incurred. Is that saying that in the right context?
Yes, you got it.
Again, I didn't pass the final year of college, but like if there's an influence to be had there, that may be the one. So the sell the team mark thing, like let's let that one go, Raider Nation.
Well, and I think two things here, and I think that to Mark Davis's credit, because at the end of the day, and I always say this, I say this to friends here. I have friends in Ohio that are Cleveland Browns fans, and I just say, look, you and listen. I grew up a Padre fan and Clippers back when they were in San Diego, and then moved to LA. You can't overcome bad ownership, and I would argue that when it comes to the football side of things, Mark Davis has not been a good owner. Okay. Now he got the team to Las Vegas. He did all that kind of stuff. He wants to win. I have no doubt about that. Like you said, Murph, I've met the man several times, talked to him personally when I was there covering the team. And I genuinely believe that, but I also believe that he doesn't know how to make the best decisions for the football side of things. So he went to John Gruden. He really believed John Gruden would do that. And we saw how that ended up as far as the player personnel side. Didn't work out. All that stuff happened, whatever. I'm not even talking about the email stuff. I'm just talking about the football stuff. So then he listens to people he trusts and he hires the Patriot guys. Didn't work out. I understood why he did that, even though people hated it. It made sense. Then now with Antonio Pierce, I think Mark, in my view, makes emotional decisions sometimes. And Al Davis was not as you know, from all the stories and all, you got books right behind you to tell you about it too. Al Davis, it was all about winning and business, and he didn't care if he insulted you, if he liked you, it didn't matter. He just wanted to win. Okay. So from that perspective, I think that's where the issue is. And so I wrote a piece back in January saying he needed some kind of vice or president of football operations and just keep him out of it, other than just getting his stamp of approval on the money. Just stay out of all of it. Coaching, GM, don't even be involved with it because it hasn't worked out for you, even though you've meant the best for it. And you're right. He's not going to sell the team. Although my good friend, Ed Marshall out there, who's probably listening, he really believes that that's why he's bringing Tom Brady in. Because Mark doesn't have any heirs. Who's he going to leave the team to? Who's he going to leave the team to? So I think there might be a play there. Who knows? I think it's a good guess. But anyway, but you're right. You have to be able to, this team, I think, has to, especially now that it's in Las Vegas, it has to figure that out. And maybe Antonio Pierce, maybe this will all change and work out. I don't know. I'm skeptical, but we'll see all that happens. I just want, and again, for me, because our show does better when the Raiders do better. And so I've been waiting 8 years for that to happen. And so far, no, but I want it for the fans, Murph, like you and all the folks that we talk to here on the show, because these fans are so damn good and they just want their team to win, right? I'm not saying they got to win the Super Bowl every year. All that would be great. Just be there in the conversation all the time. That's all, right? That's all fans want. And that's what I hope for. And I hope Mark Davis, I think he's been on a journey and I think he recognized that more and more. And I'm hoping now, if Antonio Pierce works out, great, then he made a fine decision. If it doesn't work out, then I hope he finds somebody and says, look, I need somebody to just make these decisions for me. You can inform me. I want to be involved to a certain point. But after that, it's all you. And it's a lot of trust, no doubt about it. But he's not done that. And so far, it hasn't worked for them.
Well, yeah, I think he did it with John, though. I mean, he definitely did that with John, and that, we heard comments from Mark after, Mark Bedane left and John Gruden left, that it was like, he said, I lost my stability. And I think that he's been kind of reeling ever since then. And frankly, he might've been reeling even before that. And I think that if anything, I can give credit to Mark when it does come to the football decisions. And listen, when it comes to the business side of it, there's hands down, he wins. Like he's been very, very successful in everything he's done in terms of relocating this football team and the value of the team and all that. So you can't dispute that. When it comes to the football operations side, he basically turned everything over to Reggie McKenzie. He turned things over, to Jack Del Rio and all. I think he is aware enough that he's not his dad, and And that's a very important thing because, I don't feel like, and like you, I mean, I met Mark a couple of times. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that thinks he's got it all figured out. I mean, and you think about this, Scott, his father is literally the legacy, not only of the Raiders, but of the AFL and the NFL. Like his father built this. Like what, I mean, so to have that kind of recognition to say, you know what, I'm not my old man. My old man was a genius and I'm never going to be that. And a coach. Like, I mean, Al Davis was arguably the finest football brain that's ever existed in the NFL. And when it comes to marketing, like all this Raider stuff, the ink, the freaking colors, all this came out of one guy's brain. Yeah, Al Davis he's like George Lucas or freaking Paul McCartney or what. He just invents worlds. Like he just invented this he's J.R.R. Tolkien, for crying out loud. That's what Al Davis is. He crafted all of this. Everything was intentional. And so to take that and that type of a football brain, and then as now his kid, and you're like, well, you know what? I can't be that. No one can be, Mark. And that's fine. So I think that he tries to turn it over to people, but for whatever reason, those things have failed. And I don't think it's entirely an indictment on Mark. I don't think that, like, I feel like he goes into these things with the best intentions.
I do too.
Right? I really do. I genuinely think that. It's not like he's not taking the easy way out. He's not taking the cheap way out. He's not taking the prideful way out. He's not doing that. It's just that the ones that he has chosen, unfortunately, for various reasons, including emails, hasn't led to success. So here we are. So what are we going to do about it? What's he going to do about it? And we will certainly find out. But I think that ultimately, Scott, it comes down to this, is that when he feels that pressure. No one wants the Raiders to win more than Mark Davis. He's the biggest Raider fan on the planet. Despite all of us fans out here, whatever, no one will ever be a bigger fan than the Raiders than Mark Davis. So he wants it more than anybody. And so ultimately, it's going to take what point is he going to get to where you said, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, where he just turns it over and goes, you know what, Tom, here you go.
Yeah,
10% minority owner, and you call the shots from here out. I'm out. I just want to be the figurehead and the business head. You know what I mean?
And by the way, he's not the only one who does this. I mean, I would argue that that's the problem, and I know how Raider fans hate the Cowboys, and I do too. But that's the problem with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is the GM. He's the owner. He's doing this. He's doing that. He's cutting deals. And hasn't worked out for him either. So I think that that he's had some great players and better teams in some ways than the Raiders, but they don't win. Like they get to the playoffs, but they don't win. That's just as frustrating sometimes too. So I get it.
I want to be like Jeffrey Lurie, you know what I mean? Robert Kraft, like that's the kind of energy that we want to see out of Mark Davis. Just own the team. Just own the damn team.
Be the biggest cheerleader there is.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right, Murph, as we wrap up the show, of course, we talked about, and thank you to everybody who's given of their own on the Super Chat. All that money goes to the One Nation Foundation, which Murph is going to tell you about right now and what they do for Raiders charities. And take it away, Murph.
Yeah, so I just ripped my cord out because I talk with my hands. So hopefully this is my turn to talk.
There's more background noise.
Okay. All right. Good deal. So, One Nation Foundation, that's our nonprofit. When we figured out back in 2019, we could make some money with Raiders Fan Radio, we decided we wanted to give 100% of that money away. So we give it away to Raiders related charities through our foundation. So we just ask that you support Raiders Fan Radio any way that you can, even with a non-monetary support, like a thumbs up, like a subscribe, all that stuff, whether it's the audio podcast or the video podcast on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Raiders Fan Radio. All that stuff supports the foundation because we get advertisers and I won't mention them here because Scott has his own advertisers, but we have our own as well on Raiders Fan Radio. And we don't get those without your support. So it's not about bumping our numbers for the show. It's about supporting the foundation, and we can't support the foundation without the support of the show. So check out Raiders Fan Radio on any audio podcast, again on the YouTubes there. And the foundation is the One Nation Foundation, and 100% of the money that we make with our show goes to Raiders related charities like the Bolitnikoffs, like Raider Dad, like the Max Crosby Foundation. We're kicking around some amazing ideas to give to the folks that are out in the eastern part of the United States that are dealing with some absolutely horrific conditions out there in North Carolina and Georgia and East Tennessee, and you all know the states. And so thank you, Scott, for your platform as always. Thank you for your willingness to share the One Nation Foundation and your platform with all of your listeners. And can't wait, man. We've got some exciting stuff, and Raider Nation, man, stay tuned, man. We've got some really, really cool stuff coming up for the foundation, and none of that happens without Scott. And this is not just blowing smoke here, man. Like Scott, for real, like you're a real one, man, as the kids say. Like you really do, man. And it's touching to us that you're willing to take. You're a traditional media guy, you're a legacy media guy, and then you have a dopey podcaster like me on your show each and every week to talk about my favorite football team, but then also to give a platform for the One Nation Foundation, and not only this platform, but the things that you're doing behind the scenes, man. Like I don't think Raider Nation knows enough. And again, I know you won't celebrate yourself, and you're a humble guy, but I will. I'll celebrate you, and thank you for what you've got going on, because it's amazing, man, and we just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you, man. No, listen, you guys, you and Michelle and Jeff and the team do all the work. I'm just happy to be part of it. I know Mo and I are proud to be part of that. And of course, Raider Dad out there, Josh and those guys. And we still got to get him on the show. I've been trying to get on the show a couple of weeks, and I've dropped the ball a couple of times, but we'll get him on to talk about that because you support them and do great work with them. So we'll talk about that, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait to tell them about some of the stuff we're working on, and can't wait to see you guys here in Cincinnati at the beginning of November. We're going to be doing a show from a place they serve alcohol. I'm sure it'll be fun. So it'll be good times. But Murf, hang in there during this week. I know it sucks after a loss, but let's hope we hear some positive direction out of the team, and that maybe they're thinking about doing things differently. But make sure you catch, of course, Raider Fan Raider. You guys are going to be on Wednesday as usual, despite the move on your side?
No, we're taking it off.
Okay.
So, and for those of you that can see here on the video podcast, I'm sitting on the floor of what once was the fan cave, what once was my studio, and we've got the new studio up and running. But we will be in Michelle's Spooky Lounge because it is spooky season.
Yes.
And we've been watching a lot of scary movies. None of them are as scary as the Raiders' performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we have been watching some scary movies, and we're doing shows from Michelle's Spooky Lounge. So we're taking off this week. We might have a couple of little pre-recorded things coming at you, but the week after, always on Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Check us out, Raiders Fan Radio.
That's right. And follow them everywhere you can. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow Murf and the team up on X as well. All right, my friend, I will see you next time. We'll talk to you this week, buddy.
All right, you're the best, Scott. Let's go kick the Chiefs' ass. Let's go, Raiders.
That would cure a lot of ills, wouldn't it? All right, there you go. There's Murf, Raiders Fan Radio. Make sure you check them out. I mean, listen, him and Swag Jeff and Michelle, they do so much for Raider Nation. You guys have helped them do a great show. It's hysterical. I find myself usually sipping bourbon and smoking a cigar, watching them on Wednesday nights, and it's hysterical. So make sure you do that and support all the causes, as we appreciate you guys being a part of this show as well. So many of you on tonight, and sorry again, obviously the Raiders, for fans out there, tough one again, 32-13. Offense continues to struggle, and the Raiders got to find a way to figure it out, or if they don't figure it out, at least get those young players in play. But we will be back this week to talk about it. You can also call into the show, by the way. We've already got a bunch of calls tonight for Tuesday's show. 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869 is the number. If you want to call in and leave a message, get it off your chest. Tell us what you think. Try to keep it pithy. The longer the message, the tougher it is for us. So, try to keep it minute and a half, 2 minutes. Just nail it. Tell us what you think and where you're at, and we will get you on the show. We will also be back on video on Tuesday as well, myself and Mo Moten, so make sure you do that. Make sure you give us a like here. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're live on Telegram, Twitch, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and X. So we're live everywhere. So wherever you like watching your video, you're going to find us there as well. So we appreciate that. And as well as a subscription to the audio portion, because we are an Odyssey Sports original podcast. So wherever you get your audio, check Silver and Black today and do that too. Even if you watch us and you don't listen to us normally, subscribe anyway. It helps us out significantly. We appreciate that very much. And just a big thank you again to our friends at BetUS who sponsor this video and bring it to you. And a reminder, if you want to bet football with, to me, the best there is, BetUS, you can use our code. I keep saying code YouTube 150. That's YouTube 150, 150% sign up bonus up to $2,000. The link will be below in the description. I will put it there as soon as the show is over. So if you forget it, you can come back there, but it is the promo code YouTube 150 up at BetUS from Silver and Black today. And you can check out that great deal, right? So make sure you do that. And we appreciate you guys supporting our sponsor, BetUS, which has been phenomenal for us. So thank you so much for that. All right. For our producer, Mike Robier, as well as Murf from Raiders Fan Radio, I am Scott Gulbransen. Raider Nation, have a better week. Keep your chin up and keep thinking about the future, and we'll keep talking about it here as well. This has been Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast brought to you by on video by BetUS. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you Tuesday.